Right.
Okay, so this is our third week live room, and we were going to talk about feedback. Zan, you wanted to share some thoughts about how you feel about feedback.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that from Saturday, it was quite demotivating hearing all the things that I did wrong. But I've never had feedback from a tutor. I've always had feedback from a student, so they don't know what I'm doing, when they don't know when they should be bored, when they Um, but it was a bit harsh because I'd never heard it before. But then I could, but then we discussed. So what can you do to avoid that? Why do you think that? So there's a bit of lateral thinking, and everything made sense. Don't correct the pronunciation directly after. You're going to hinder them from wanting to speak. That was just, I used that on the first thing on Sunday morning. Um, so everything that went wrong, I kind of know exactly why and what to do to fix it.
Well, I mean that's really good to hear. I'd like to pick up on a couple of those points, and Philip, feel free to jump in as well if you want. I think first of all, your comments that the feedback was harsh. I suppose I should say I'm sorry to hear that, but I am and I'm not in the it's sort of harsh in that kind of. It sounds like harsh, but you're saying valid and warranted and fair. So I'll take the harsh, and I also think that if you create enough confidence in your TP group and enough trust in each other, you can kind of be almost brutally direct at times, but at the same time realize that brutal directness is to help you improve your teaching, and is also something that we've all experienced. When I did my Delta, there were 3 tutors, and one of them, after she observed me teach, just looked at me and went, "That was awful. What was that?" And this was after I'd been director of studies at 2 in lingua schools in Ecuador, and had managed a team of 40 teachers and teach train. I thought I was the dogs. I thought I was like the man. And then this woman just totally took the wind out of my sails. And I remember thinking, you bitch, how could you? And then of course, that's the observation that taught me the most about my own teaching. And then in the other extreme, there was a guy, after I did my observation, there was a pub next door to the school I was teaching at. And he said, "Oh, do you want your feedback now?" I said, "Okay." He said, "All right, should we meet in the pub?" And we went to the pub and both ordered a pint, and both, smoked a cigarette and drank a pint. And he just told me it was great. And I can't remember anything about that lesson at all. So that was kind of my own experience with the harshness. We've all been there, and I could see your face drop when I gave you some feedback.
Yeah.
But you did take it well, and it probably didn't help because there are only 2 of you, and Iris's class was actually not unusually strong, but it was pretty strong for a TP2.
Yeah, it was.
I'm saying all these nice things about Iris, and I'm being horrible to Zan. And I sort of felt that, but then I thought, well, do you know what? Next time, Zan won't do it like that, and he will make changes. And when we come to write his final report, then he's going to get a good grade. And if I'd have said, "Oh, that's all great and you're wonderful," then you could have gone on, and you could have ended up not getting as much learning out of it as you could have.
Yeah, no, sure. I fully agree. I mean, also before I did the course, there's all the how hard the course is, and how. So for me, I didn't take it personally, but I took it as that's going to stick in my brain so that I know what to change next time. If you said, what did you think about it? Okay, do you think you should change it? You said, no. The students fell asleep when we did a group correction activity. I was like, that made sense. Everyone was quiet. They looked at the paper. Yeah, everyone fell asleep. So then we said, how can we fix that? Now I know you can mingle it. You can find the person with the right answer and say, go to that person, make it more interactive. And now that thing is stuck in my head. So it was harsh, but I didn't take it personally. But my teaching has changed already. So, I would say don't change anything. Otherwise, I'm not going to learn anything if you say it's all good.
To say that, that's interesting. You say my teaching's changed. I mean, that's the best compliment you can pay yourself to. And I remember when I finished the Delta. So I came from Ecuador, and my director of studies where I was in the UK said, "Oh, you need to do this Cambridge Delta." I'm like, I don't need to do anything. I'm the man, and I know everything about teaching. I've been same deal as Berlitz. I've been in Lingua for years, and by the end of it, I almost wanted to write a letter of apology to all the students that had paid money for me to teach them before I did the Delta. And you know what? If you're a Berlitz teacher, chances are a lot of what you do in the classroom is going to be pretty boring, because the direct method is often quite boring. Now, I know some Berlitz schools apply it more rigidly than others. And actually, the Inlingua school I was at, I applied it super, super rigidly. So it was all about drilling, and we had all these hand signals and loads of correction, and it was all very, very rigid. And looking back, it was quite often quite boring. So I suppose, in a sense, if you are teaching the Berlitz method, and you're probably quite used to seeing students kind of sitting there going, because that's part and parcel, I think, of the method. I'm not decrying it. I still use parts of it, but there is a little bit of, you and Philip are kind of in the Moonies. Is it the Moonies? Yeah, the Moonies. Remember them, the 70s religious cult? And there is a little bit of mooniness about Berlitz, and we do need to deprogram you a little bit.
Yeah, I agree fully. Luckily, our director, she has done the CELTA course quite a couple of years ago, and Philip and I, we all go speak to her all the time, because the one that she did was sounded pretty harsh, and so she says, you know what, if you can take the goals or the aims, as we call it here in the CELTA, if you can take that and put it into an interesting lesson, and you do present, practice, and performance, and make it as interesting as you can for the students, go ahead. And but it's not like we have free reign to mess around. She, once or twice a year, she comes and observes our classes, and then we critique our class together, as like what we're doing now with the feedback. So it kind of keeps me on my toes. Also, I want to do the best as I can for the students, because that's when they want to come back. That's when I got a good name. So for me, that's what it's just to improve the two things that I want out of the CELTA course is obviously the certificate, but obviously to improve myself, to improve my teaching. That's the two things that I want.
And I think that point, and I'm going to ask Philip to come in after this to share his experience with Tim. I mean, I'm Bambi compared to Tim. I think that point about the certification, and I know Ben said it was really important for him that he got this certificate. And I think that was when I did the Delta. So I don't have a CELTA myself, so I can't talk about that. But when I did the Delta, I went into it because I needed the certification. And it wasn't until I was in a classroom after I'd finished that I realized how much it had affected my teaching, and in fact transformed my teaching. And I think, and I hope that the CELTA at its most successful is transformative. But I don't think that transformation is often apparent until after the course is finished and some things have sunk in. So Philip, let's get your take on how is feedback going. Do you feel that you want to crawl into a hole and die? Are you taking it like a man? How's it going?
Yeah. First of all, sorry I don't have my headphones today, so I'm not sure if there's feedback or anything, or if you can hear me. Yeah, it was kind of surprising. Well, just in terms of the transformation that I'm sure will happen, that I expect and hope to happen. Like I told as Sam was saying, I told our director, our LIS today, is that it's too early. I can tell that I'm sort of like in between the two let's say, methods or approaches or however you want to define it. But so I'm sort of in that no man's land right now. Like I can see that my teaching has been affected, you know. I'm trying to incorporate both in the sense that I'm also, you know, I'm very observant of the students. So I am kind of looking to see, you know, like what you guys are saying, are they enjoying it, are they not? You know, should we do more of this or more of that? But, so I'm curious to see where I'll be at the end of all this after the 3 months. But yeah, like for the first TP, I felt actually really good about it. Like the energy, how I felt interactive, I felt good. And then when I got done, Tim was like, oh my gosh, you know, it's like your teacher talk time is way too high, you know, and it's not all about you. And you didn't do anything with the monitoring. I was thinking about what we had talked about in terms of correction during the first live class. And so I was like, not correcting at all, but then I went to the other extremes. I wasn't correcting, just kind of watching everybody, and they were just doing whatever they were doing and stuff. The second one he said was better, but it didn't feel as good actually. But yeah, he thought it was better. So it's still going to be this thing. I mean, my teacher talk time was lower. That was good. I wasn't echoing as much. I almost got rid of all the echoing, which I was happy about. But again, still, I kind of go back and forth because I think sometimes I like the echoing because I feel like it's like, I don't know, solving the problem or getting to the issue right away. Like it's very direct, and I'm correcting something right away where I feel like if I wait too long, I might forget about it, or maybe the student will be bored. They'll feel like, wow, he's not correcting me, nothing's going on. So I see both sides of it right now, and I feel like I probably don't even understand totally exactly the reasoning behind both. Yeah, because I'm still learning. So.
Okay, thanks for that. Let me butt in there if you want to mute. First of all, your sound is slightly better than last week, but still really, really bad. I got probably 80% of that, but using my Super Celta Tutor listening skills. I don't know if Zan and Ben got all of that, but I don't know if you could find another spot with slightly better. I tell you what you can do actually. On the bottom, you've got that stop video. So if you press that stop video, sometimes that will give you a bit more bandwidth. And next time you speak, although we won't see your handsome face, we might hear your mellifluous tones a little bit better. So that's just the first point. I want to pick up 2 points from what you said. The first point is this idea of correction. And the second point is the notion of Tim's idea of it's not all about you. And I want to relate that to something that I observed in Zan's lesson as well. So let's take that second point first. When we're observing, we are often spending more time looking at the students than we do looking at you. And the reason for that is the lesson, and it sounds blindingly obvious, but the lesson is about what they learn. And if students demonstrate engagement, they're demonstrating engagement goes hand in hand with learning. And, you know, when I'm listening to them, especially this group who often talk in Spanish, I'm listening to their little asides in Spanish. And there was one, I can't remember if it was Zan or Iris last week. They explained, I think it was Iris actually, she explained boring. And one of the students said, you know, in Spanish, what does boring mean? And her partner explained it to her, and it was the explanation was completely off. And because I was listening in feedback, I was then able to say to whoever the teacher was, oh, by the way, that went on. So I think that's a really sage piece of advice from Tim, and kind of something you can bear in mind. Even if you get, you know, you get through a lesson and you think, oh, I did pretty well there. If afterwards you realize that you were doing most of the talking, or you did well because you got some good laughs because you had a couple of good gags, but students didn't really come away with this sense of this is the language that I learned or this is the skill that I improved, then you're not going to get a good evaluation. So really great advice from Tim. And a practical point that I would suggest is feel the vibe in the room. You know, like you were saying, Zan, the other day when your students were switched off, that feel it, be sensitive to the vibe in the room. And if you feel that your students are getting bored and they'll never show it explicitly because they're polite, then you know you're doing something wrong. There should be that little crackle of excitement in the room. Okay, let's take error correction, let's put it to bed, and let's be quite clear about procedure for error correction. There are two, and I'm going to talk about speaking now, which is when, the first area of error correction is when we most correct error, and then we'll talk about writing. There are two types of speaking activity, and I think you actually mentioned them, Zan, when you talked about the Berlitz method. And they are sometimes called practice and production, or sometimes called controlled practice and freer practice. I think in Berlitz you call them something like practice and performance. But the idea is you've somehow got this more controlled speaking from students, and then you've got the less controlled speaking from students. The purpose of the more controlled speaking from students, or the focus, is generally on accuracy. So it's about the students producing accurate form, pronunciation, etc. When the focus is on accuracy, it's very much more incumbent on you to do correction. When it's on freer practice or production, then it becomes slightly different, and I'll deal with that in a second. So the first thing you've got to do in your lesson plan is identify the purpose of that speaking. Is it practice for accuracy, or is it practice for fluency? Is it controlled or freer? You decide that it's controlled practice. You allow the students to speak, you make a note, and then ideally you write up the errors on the board, and then you try and elicit the correction from the student. And eliciting the correction from the student or from the group is always more desirable than you offering the correction. And a skilled teacher will lead his students to the correct form. So let's look at an example. It's quite difficult in this context, but let's try and think of an example. Okay. So student says something like that: John don't live in Dubai. Okay. So we want to elicit doesn't, third person. Okay, so how would you correct this? You might say something like something as simple as could you just, well, actually not even that. Okay, everybody, I don't, you elicit don't, he elicit doesn't, and just go through the conjugation, and then say John don't live in Dubai, and then see if somebody corrects. So as simple as that, no instruction. I don't, you don't, here you're eliciting all of these, and that's enough for students then to identify the slip. And it's also important to realize when you've got a slip and when you've got a gap in knowledge. Now, often students, when they're trying to produce, you're trying to produce content, you're trying to order ideas, and you're trying to do all this in an unfamiliar language. So you're processing an idea and you're processing language. Now, when I'm trying to get a message across, my priority is going to be communicating the message. And that means that the language often degenerates. And what you're doing is saying, you've got the message across, but did you notice anything about the language? They think about the language, think about their own knowledge of the language, identify the slip. And the idea is that next time you've given them just that little help for them to be able to, when they're producing the content, for that language to be produced more automatically. i.e., I've got it in my head, I've been corrected, I'm going to look out for that. And the next time I want to talk about John, yeah, John doesn't live in Dubai, John doesn't speak Arabic. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you're with me. Good stuff. Okay, so let me just recap briefly. You've got an accuracy activity, control practice, allow students to participate, go around, pen and paper is ideal, make a couple of notes. When the activity's finished, on the board, put a couple of things up and try and elicit the slips from students. Now, two other points. Let's say that you've got 10 mistakes or 10 slips or 10 errors. You think, well, shit, I can't deal with all of these. Which ones do you go for? It's simple. You think to yourself, yes, you do categorize. I mean, do you want to chat and say, what would those categories be? Think about level, think about frequency, think about usefulness.
Can I say something quickly?
So Ben is saying, yeah, you can, Sam. Ben is saying, he says commonness. We talk about frequency. So things that are used a lot, that could definitely be a category. Sam?
So just for example, if we're doing a controlled practice and you're focusing on do and doesn't, as you said now, if there are, for example, 5 slips of that and maybe 5 slips of subject pronoun, it would just me thinking naturally now, if I was focusing on do and does, I would first correct that because that's what we're focusing on. And then I would say, if there is enough time or if it's useful in the activity, then go down to the other whatever subject pronouns. But first concentrate on the ones that you're focus that your aim is.
Yeah. So again, you're absolutely spot on. We call that target language. So I've given it 3 categories here. Target language. So you're looking at doing, you're looking at the present simple or whatever the case may be, negative forms or whatever. Frequency. So, let's say you say hyperbolic instead of hyperbolic. Well, who cares? You're never going to say the word again in your life. And then level. So, you've got a beginner who mispronounces, anti-disestablishmentarianism. Well, do you know what? They managed to get something out, and that's fantastic for that level, so let's not worry about that. Yes. Target language is your first priority. Is it high frequency? Is it at their level? Now, you'll find there's this idea from Stephen Krashen, and he talks about your level plus 1. Okay. So the idea is that you want to be correcting, ideally, just above the student's current level. So for elementary students, they kind of know present simple, but it's still a little bit of a struggle for them, and they perhaps don't know all the permutations, or, you know, have got a rudimentary knowledge, but it's not that sophisticated. So that's where you want to correct. Now, if you're an intermediate and someone says, John don't live in Abu Dhabi, you may just say, oh, by the way, somebody said John don't live in Abu Dhabi. Really? You know, and then it's automatic, oh, God, of course, sorry, John doesn't live in Abu Dhabi. And you know, it would be much quicker. There was another point that I wanted to talk about. What was it? So this is to see how closely you were listening. Go on, Dan.
We're talking about correction now, instead of just giving the answer, like when you just gave us feedback for the course. If you could have just given, say, that was wrong, do this, we would never remember it. But if you made it a bit of a point, so for example, just don't say John lives in Dubai. Got it? Okay, good. Next point. Maybe elicit self-correction, because then they get to think about it, because you're not going to be walking around with them in the city correcting all the English. They need to think about it by themselves first, and if they can't, then elicit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this idea of kind of making them aware of it's called noticing, and again, you know, we could talk about this all day, but it's all really important stuff. And it's this idea that good students are the students that notice their own language. And it's this idea that good students are students that notice other people's language and compare it to their own internal model. And it's the idea that what we're doing in the classroom is we're helping them, you know, by, as you said, don't just give them the answer, but you're saying, look, what's up with that, and why do we do that, and what's going on here? Because you're helping them to develop that skill. And I think that you've really hit an important point again there. Ben has put, John don't live in Abu Dhabi, does he? Using question tags. So are you saying that? Well, I don't understand your point there, Ben. Is this kind of a way of correcting for high level students or something else? Could you give us a bit of context there? Yes. Yeah. I think that's a good point, actually. And you could oh shit, what's it called? Echo, is it echo feedback or echo correction? I should know this, I'm a CELTA trainer. I think it's called echo feedback or echo correction. When somebody, but this is in turn correction, so it may not come up, but the idea is, you know, Maria says, oh, John don't live in Abu Dhabi. And you say, oh, John doesn't live in Abu Dhabi, and you would echo back the correct structure. Yeah. But I think that question tag's also, you know, a valid one. Ben, thanks for that. Yes, he's introducing does in the tag, but I mean, yeah, it's definitely something you'd do at a higher level. You know, this idea of just throwing out the sentence that needs to be corrected, the language that needs to be corrected. So we've talked about this controlled practice and when we do it, and a little bit how we do it. Freer practice, the emphasis is on fluency, and fluency means getting the message out. I'm just looking at Philip's response there. Perhaps talk about someone else who doesn't live in Abu Dhabi either. My friend Bob doesn't live in Abu Dhabi either. And they don't realise you've just corrected it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's this idea of this sort of echo correction. Yeah, absolutely. You could. I think that's something. I can't remember if they use that in the direct method or not, but it's something I do. Well, I'm slightly ashamed to say it, but it's something me and my 7-year-old and 10-year-old do with my wife all the time, and with her pronunciation. You know, she's a Spanish speaker, so she's an English teacher as well. I mean, her language is good, but she'll say things like second instead of second, and you know, and the three of us will start saying, "Yes, Dad, give me 1 second," and I'll say, "Yes, okay, son, I'll give you 1 second," and that she normally tells us to fuck off, and we carry on with the rest of the day. But but yeah, that idea of, you know, and you can ham it up, and you can, you know, you can with certainly some of the intermediates, you know, you can have a laugh with them about it, and you know, the prom things, even the beginners, you know, you can say sorry. You want a shit on your bed, or a fuck with your meal, you know, and most people will see the funny side. Well, certainly a bunch of Latina ladies would see the funny side. They would be rolling in the aisles. Wouldn't necessarily try to live with the Emiratis, but there you go. So yeah, we were talking about freer activities. Not so much of an issue there. Again, I would write things down, and I would guide myself with, you know, what has the same rules really. But I would be probably less concerned with form, and I might be more concerned, for example, with giving people alternative ways, and things like vocabulary. You know, some classic. My wife, for example, still says propaganda instead of advertising. In Latin American Spanish, advertising is, you know, una propaganda. So rather than you know, he don't like the propaganda on the television, rather than the correcting that he don't like, you might write down the word propaganda, and you might say, right, you know, well, what does this mean? And perhaps, you know, that's less about sort of correcting those slips, and perhaps more about, you know, giving them some different vocabulary, or some other point which is a little bit over and above necessarily this sort of strict let's correct the third person conjugation.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I struggle with this, so I just wanted to ask. So the controlled practice, it's more about the grammar, the accuracy, whereas the freer practice is more about getting the message across rather than the grammar.
Yes.
So you would rather correct the message rather than the grammar.
Yes.
In the freer practice.
Exactly. But again, I mean, it would be very limited, and it would just be, you know, let's try and pick something out which is interesting or useful, but it's not so much of an issue at this stage, you know. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to add to that really. And again, you know, if you can, you know, really useful to get, you know, you can even write down 4 or 5 things on the board in control practice, and then say, right, you know, come up with what's wrong with those, and give students a couple of minutes, write it into your lesson plan. You know, it's a stage, 2 or 3 minutes, talk about it. Now feedback to me. What's the problem with these? You decide. Yeah, that's an interesting approach. Second one, with the vocabulary thing, etc. You know, somebody says propaganda, and you want them to learn advertising. Why don't you say to them, oh, you said propaganda, this word, we don't use it like that in English. Can you find the right word? Get out your smartphones. And again, you're helping them to be autonomous. They go to Google Translate, put in propaganda, see what it comes up with. Oh, what about advertising? Perfect. So again, you know, this can all be, you know, to avoid lots of, I know I'm lecturing you tonight, but this is a way of avoiding lots of lecturing. Use the smartphones, build in short stages, and ask students to think about, you know, elicit, as we said, but also don't be afraid just to say to, okay, in pairs, think about where the errors are. Okay, error correcting in writing is fairly similar in that you are looking for the target language errors. Again, you might decide whether you're looking for fluency or accuracy. Now, fluency in writing is more problematic. I mean, we know there's a general meaning of fluent when we think of somebody speaking, and we kind of understand what that means. Fluency in writing is more to do with cohesion and coherence. Now, cohesion and coherence, slippery customers, you probably won't engage with this too much on the CELTA, but certainly those of you teaching in the UAE, you know, will as your teaching careers develop, you'll get more and more academic type teaching. That's where the money is here, and you'll come across this a lot more. But coherence, you know, is something that well, I mean, does anybody want to put a little definition of what each of those is? Cohesion and coherence. You can either do it verbally or you can chat it. Looks like Ben's chatted it. Let's have a look. Coherence is connection. Connection of what? Perfect. Ben says coherence is the connection of ideas. So anyway, my team, Aston Villa, has been relegated to the Championship. But I think that Birmingham is nice in the summer. And I went to some really excellent pubs. But my mom, you know, her legs at the moment are really not that good. Okay. So grammatically, that was fine. Each of the individual parts made sense, but they weren't connected. Exactly. So what I should have said was, Aston Villa, my football team, have been relegated this season. I haven't seen them play for a while because I only go during the summer. But anyway, the summer's a nice time to go. I normally go, obviously, to visit my mother mainly. We don't get out as much as we used to because she can't walk as well as she used to. But anyway, enough about that. So that would be coherence. So if that's coherence, what's cohesion? It's still about connection. Exactly. Ben's got it again. Okay. Exactly. Yeah. So it's connection of it's grammatical or linguistic connection. So, for example, you might say, Aston Villa, my football team, were relegated. Season I haven't seen for a long time. And then, you know, that would be omitting the demonstrative pronoun this season and the object pronoun them. I haven't seen them for a long time. So that's more grammatical, but again, without those grammatical words, then the flow of the meaning is interrupted. So those would be the kinds of things perhaps you're looking at when students produce a paragraph or produce a longer piece of writing. And again, this is not hard and fast rule by any means. And then perhaps if you're looking at shorter utterances, you might get more leeway to look at perhaps some grammatical accuracy issues, spelling issues, some of these other issues which are apparent from smaller samples of writing rather than larger pieces of connected writing. So let's not worry too much about that. I'll take any questions or comments you've got, but it doesn't tend to come up too much in the CELTA.
I just want to say something. It seems like I'm the only one talking, but
well, I think Ben and Philip have got a dodgy connection. So.
All right. Talking about the previous thing, connecting ideas or grammar points. The closest thing that we've taught at Berlitz is I think they call it relative clauses, because you have two sentences speaking about each other. But yeah, it's because instead of having one short stubby sentence, you want to connect your ideas by using what we've just spoken about.
Yes, indeed. Yes, yeah. There are defining and non-defining relative clauses. There are reduced relative clauses when you can omit the relative pronoun. It's a sticky old affair. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, the most common cohesive device is the. I haven't seen. I have never seen the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi. But the Sheikh of Dubai drove past me last week. So the That's the most common. And it's so common, so ubiquitous, we don't even realise that it's a cohesive device. We've got another one, it. It's a nice day today. It's a nice day. What does it mean? It doesn't actually mean anything in that sentence. It doesn't refer to anything physical. It's a grammatical inclusion, a grammatical subject, which is simply there because we need a subject, and it's there for cohesion.
What I say, because when we teach that, and I say it's sunny or it's 26 degrees, and I ask my students, I ask, what is that? And they look at it. And I said, okay, so we're talking about the weather, but we don't say the weather is sunny. We say it is sunny.
Yeah.
And it kind of clicks in their head.
Yeah.
Because I give them, but as you said before, there's only a couple of reasons why we speak, and one is like, or in the class is to have games, problem solve, and I can't remember the other one.
Some gap in information.
Yeah, exactly. So what I do, I first give them the problem so that they can think about it. And if not, then I help them to say, we're talking about the weather, but we don't say the weather is. So we say it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to kind of sink it in.
Yeah, it's interesting that when you've got those grammatical words, and you say, well, yeah, can you substitute them for a lexical word, i.e., a word with meaning? And if you can't, well, then you realise that it's just there for grammatical purposes. Let's read out Ben's contribution. Should we teach them transition words? How to avoid redundancy of ideas and words. Angry clouds are gathering outside. Storm is imminent and it could happen anytime soon. Redundancy. Yes, so i.e. angry clouds are gathering outside, a storm is imminent, and it referring to the storm. That's something called anaphoric referencing. So that it is anaphoric referencing of storm. So when you use a word that refers back to something earlier in the text. Okay. Anyway, let's address Ben's point. I don't think there's an answer to this. I think that you need to look at what the aims of your lesson are. I don't know what text you're using at intermediate level. I'll find out soon enough. But certainly the elementary group, the beginning group, we're much more focused on speaking and listening, and it probably won't come up. Anything is valid as long as it is a linguistic aim. Face-to-face intermediate, face-to-face. Another Cambridge book is a great book. I know it very well. Again, face-to-face focuses more on speaking than writing. So don't worry too much about this sort of academic side of things. I don't think that's what your students are about. But yes, if you do give a piece of writing and a student says, angry clouds are gathering outside, a storm is imminent, and the angry clouds mean the storm could happen anytime soon, then yes, you might want to say, how can you substitute angry clouds the second time? How can you substitute storm? So yes. Interesting thing about face-to-face, and I say this as an ex-employee of Cambridge University Press. I was an academic consultant for them, so I do know face-to-face and Touchstone very well. An interesting feature about face-to-face is the get ready, get it right section. Get ready, get it right, which relates to our topic of conversation today about error correction. Says that before we allow students to speak freely, to have some kind of production or fluency activity, we give them time to prepare. And the idea behind that is, I was talking earlier about you've got, when we speak, okay, let's talk about the weather. It's been a bit weird this year in the UAE. It's still not that hot. It's rained a lot, yada, yada. We want to talk about the weather, but before we talk about the weather, give me a couple of minutes to, perhaps think about some key words: storm, clouds, rain, strange, unusual, blah, 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 blah. Let me think about that. And that's important to me because it means that because I've had time to plan my ideas, when I speak, I can attend I can attend the language of the message. Because normally when we speak, like I'm speaking now off the cuff, I'm thinking about content. But because I'm a native speaker or a proficient speaker of English, I can really focus on the content. I don't have to think too much about the language. Sometimes you get, I was thinking about anaphoric referencing earlier. It's a technical word. I have to stop and think about it. But most of the time, some would say bullshit, others would say wisdom flows quite naturally, So I don't need to focus on the language. But if I wanted to do the same thing in Spanish, but I had 10 minutes to get myself ready, then it would help me to get my ideas in order and I could focus more on language. So get ready, get it right. That's my face-to-face tip. Okay, it's TP. Well, actually, it's TP all over the place. Ben's got TP1. Philip 1 and 2. Philip's on TP3. 4. 3. 4. 3. 3. And Shan's on 3 as well. So actually, yeah, Shan and Philip are in the same place. Okay, we've got 8 minutes. I want Zan to go first, and I want you to give Ben advice, TP1 and 2. And Philip, I want you to be, I think I'm going to ask you to type your advice, please. So I'll give you time to type your advice while Zan's giving his advice. Okay, you ready, Zan? Go for it.
Yeah, sure. TP1. Well, I did 2 in 1, so I guess Ben's going to do the same. I would say the first thing is obviously you can't focus on all your teaching at once because it's TP1 and 2. There's the requirement list that we should focus on, that was sent to us. I think a couple of them was just rapport, management of the classroom, management of your time. Focus on those things and maybe get a feel for the class. Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Zan, I'm hearing you.
Okay.
Oh, we can hear you, Ben, after all that chatting you've been doing. You sound good. Why haven't you been speaking?
I'm actually in my office. I can't speak much.
Okay. You're surround. I know the walls have ears.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So, and you think the time management it is a big one. Really, I would say if you've got a pet, or failing a pet, a sister, or a husband, or a wife, a 6-month-old baby, or a watermelon with a face drawn on it, I think before you teach, you should teach before you get in the classroom. So when my wife did the CELTA, I had to sit through every one of her TP before she went and did it for her tutors, and it was utterly tedious. Pretend to be one of her students. Get your significant other or somebody and go through the lesson with them. Absolutely. Good advice. Thank you, Zan.
Thank you, Zan.
Cool. Can I also, if you've got teaching experience and you feel comfortable in the class and you know how long your activities are going to take, I would also suggest, I did my TP1. I think the organization of my TP1 went pretty well, but my TP2, I was a bit disorganized, but that was a personal thing. It was just me being disorganized, but we normally teach at Berlitz, and we've got our lesson plans kind of just given there for us. So we kind of just look over it and then we teach it. But the one thing I can't emphasize enough is if you've got experience, look at the details. Your transfers from one activity to the other activity, are they going to be smooth? Is it related? That's if you're comfortable teaching, then you can go on to use that. Focus on those things if you feel comfortable teaching already. Focus on like John said, like you can see when the students are engaged and learning and then producing the language. It's not about the teacher, it's about the students, and if they find it easy to learn, So maybe adapt your activities not around your teaching, but how the students are going to respond to your questions and activity. Because I focused on a lot about me standing in front of the students rather than the students taking the information that we're presenting to them.
Okay.
I think that's excellent advice as well, actually, Zan. Definitely a CELTA tutor in the making. I would also say that if you've got a similar language level to in another language to the students you're teaching, I mean, like, you know, I'm a kind of false beginner Arabic speaker, so I speak a bit, I can read slowly, blah blah blah. I think to myself, okay, I'm going to be taught by Zan that lesson in Arabic. Which bits would be difficult for me? Which bits would be challenging? Which bits would I engage with? And try and put yourself in their shoes. As you say, it's all about them. So great advice. Philip, you're going to struggle to top that. What have you got up your sleeve? Advice for. Shit, I just delivered a brilliant little message there, and it wasn't even it wasn't there. I'm going to try it again. Dear Ben, please remember that these are beginner students, which means that everything you say is too much. Exactamente. Entonces, por ejemplo, if I begin a hablar en español, así ustedes tal vez, you know, you can understand un poco, pero no van a understand todo el message. Por lo tanto, you know, ¿para qué seguir dando un message muy long cuando no solo van a entender algunos words? Okay. Therefore, reduce your TTT as much as possible. Remember how it was for you when you first learned the lesson. Pen, this is a pen. Make good eye contact with your students. Yes, eye contact is a big one. Latinos like eye contact. Listen to them, feel comfortable, and help them. Yes, smile a lot, laugh at yourself. Positive energy is contagious. Yes, and they will feel relaxed and be able to perform well. Excellent advice. Don't try to teach them more than 3 things at a time. It's better them to feel like they've accomplished something, even if only a few things, rather than bogging them down with tens of items. Yes. Again, and I go back to my own experience learning Arabic, if I could go away at the end of the Arabic lesson feeling that I could say 2 or 3 phrases I couldn't at the beginning, I was a happy student. And if you get them to repeat a phrase 20 times, you know, you might be thinking, oh God, they're repeating this phrase a lot. This is really boring. Actually, most of the time, they're glad of that opportunity to practice. Be mindful of your pace. Yes. Give them language they can use immediately after the class if possible. Yes. Meaningful language will be learned and acquired more easily than something irrelevant to their lives. Put yourselves in their shoes. I can't hear you now. I hope you can now. Si, senor. Yes. Don't talk about snow. What are the topics that are relevant in the UAE? Snow, democracy. What else? Yemen, don't talk about that. Certainly don't talk about that. Some of those ladies might have, yes, premarital dating. It's a good one.
Religion.
Religion, yes. Although actually, some people in this course have actually taken the opportunity to explain some things about the UAE to their students. You would be amazed at how little some of these people know. Don't forget, Latin Americans come from the other side of the world. They've got absolutely no idea that there are different types of Islam. They've got no idea that there's a difference between Shia and Sunnis, or that Iran and the Gulf don't get on very well. or that the hijab is a cultural thing, or that you pray 5 times a day, or that Emiratis actually do drink in private, or all the other things that we kind of take for granted. They really don't know, or that it's not okay to go to the mall with everything hanging out. They just simply, don't know that that's not a good idea. So that can be useful as well. Great advice. It's 8:01. My wife's gone to play basketball and has left the kids home alone, so I'm going to get back before they set fire to the place.
So can I just say something?
Yes.
I'm going to have to take a run. I think I'm guessing we're almost towards the end of the session, but I'm going to have to run quickly.
I'm going now. It's ending now.
All right.
Bye.
Cool. Thank you. Ciao.
Thanks to everybody. See you soon.